Hey, Geekscapists, we're going to be talking all about Marvel's Moon Knight, which just finished up there on Disney Plus. This is like Marvel's. People have described him as Batman, but he's not Batman. He's got something a little more supernatural about him going on. He's actually possessed by an Egyptian god. A lot of people were actually confused by Moon Knight. I think he's actually a pretty confusing character, as I've said on the show before. If you listen to Geekscape, going up to leading up to the launch of Moon Knight, I was definitely saying, hey, how are they going to make this work? Because he's a very confusing character. On the page, I would argue that he hasn't had the most consistent run in the comic pages. So what are they going to do on the TV show? How are they going to make a kind of, I'll continue to argue, inconsistent character consistent enough? Well, Oscar Isaac, well, that helps a lot, and he did a phenomenal job. We're going to really get into the nitty gritty on Moon Knight in this special. We are not going to be talking about Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. That'll come up early next week. We're going to give you all a chance to watch the movie first, but I hope that by now you've all seen some Moon Knight. We're going to be spoiling the heck out of it. So why don't we get started? Y'all ready? I'm ready. Let's go. Oh, I have to hit the video clip. There we go. Hey, Geekscapists, Jonathan here, and I just want to let you all know this is the Moon Knight Geekscape special. Ian Kerner is going to join me here in a bit, so there's going to be massive spoilers. If you have not watched all 6 episodes of Disney Plus and Marvel's Moon Knight, you probably want to bounce right now because we're going to get into the nitty gritty of it. If you don't mind spoilers, if you're like, I'll watch it later, but I just kind of like listening to you and Ian work us through the episodes and tell us what was going on. We like your version of it, which is insane because we're not Oscar Isaac. Then yeah, stick around, pull up a chair, pull up something to drink, and hang out because we're going to be talking all things Moon Knight. And it sounds like this episode, like this is the Marvel show that maybe is the least familiar character to a lot of you. And it's a pretty confusing character. This is a multiple personality character. There's a lot going on here. And I think Jeremy Slater and company did a great job of representing this character on the TV screen. Was it successful for everyone? I don't know. I definitely heard some people either way say they loved it, and some people say, whoa, that I didn't know what was going on. As Big Yank says up in New York, he says, more like confused night. Well, I got good news for you, Big Yanks. Confusion no more. We got our good friend Ian Kerner here to help us work our way through Moon Knight. Ian, how are you doing, buddy?
Doing all right. How you doing?
I'm good. Just to clarify for you guys, Ian and I went to see Doctor Strange last night. We've got Doctor Strange on the brain, but you got to be patient. We got to let you all watch it over the weekend. So we're going to be talking Doctor Strange early next week. We're not going to be spoiling any Doctor Strange. We're not going to be talking any Doctor Strange. We're going to be talking Moon Knight. So if you've got Doctor Strange on the brain, too bad. Be patient. We're talking Moon Knight today. This is the Geekscape Moon Knight Season 1 special. All right, Ian. Let's talk Moon Knight. This is a character that's probably like lower tier for me as far as like what I love. I'm a big Spider-Man fan. I'm a big fan of Avengers books, things like that. I love the X-Men. But when it comes to Moon Knight, I've had a rough go of it. Moon Knight's kind of inconsistent to me. There's a lot going on every time I pick up the book. He's got multiple personalities. Talk to me about the intro of Moon Knight. Like, where did he come from? Who is he?
Moon Knight, it's definitely been an inconsistent book. Here's an interesting thing about Moon Knight. A lot of people look at Moon Knight in the comics a classic Moon Knight as sort of like Marvel's Batman, much more so than Daredevil. In the comics, he doesn't really have superpowers other than the fact that he's gotten reincarnated a few times. Sometimes he has a little bit greater strength at night, but it's not crazy, superpowers. Probably the most classic run is in the 80s and you have like Doug Moench, who also wrote a lot of Batman, writing it. It's actually interesting. A lot of people, and not to go off on a Batman tangent, but there's a lot of people that think, and I know that you grew up on the TV show and you love a little bit of a goofier Batman. And I think you've even said to me, that, you like some people feel, oh, after Dark Knight Returns, everyone felt they had to go that way in Batman. But I think what a lot of people don't realize is long before Dark Knight Returns, that tone in Batman existed. I mean, certainly, and I'm not even just saying in the beginning, fine, it changed with the 60s show, but
No, we talked about it last week on the show because Neil Adams. We were eulogizing Neil Adams, and I said that he played a big role.
Run with Denny O'Neil, right? And then you have Doug Moench. So Batman was gritty long before that. And the thing is, Moon Knight came along at that time, and so one of the writers that wrote Batman wrote a lot of Moon Knight. And the initial idea that we did get in this show, not to jump ahead, I know we were trying to lay it out in sort of an episode order, but there's this idea he's a straight up mercenary. In the comics they really get into the origin, you really see it. Bushmaster is for the longest time is his main bad guy, so they did drop a reference to him, that he's the bad mercenary that's going to raid the tomb. And, he turned on Mark and he kills him in the comics, and he dies, right in front of Khonshu's temple, and Khonshu brings him back. But, and what you really get that and again, we'll get into it, but probably my biggest disappointment with the show is we don't have a street level Moon Knight, because Moon Knight is generally a very street level character.
Like a Daredevil,
Daredevil, Batman, kind of. He's in the city and he's beating up the bad guys.
Would Moon Knight have worked well on like a Netflix, like when they were doing the Defenders characters?
Absolutely. I mean, Moon Knight is a Marvel Knight type thing. Absolutely. That was what I expected from Moon Knight. When those shows are coming out, my hope was, oh, good, give us Moon Knight next.
Yeah.
Because he definitely would have fit into that. Okay,
so we've got
this is very different than that.
Yeah, and we were going to get into it because it goes off the rails pretty quickly, in a great way. And honestly, like, there were episodes, and we'll talk about episode 5, where I had to watch the episode twice because the story around episode 4 was starting to delineate from what I wanted it to be, which is, I think, closer to what you were talking about, it being street level, and starts really getting into the pantheon of the Egyptian gods and supernatural powers.
And let me say this, in talking about the comic run. So, for the most part, usually you don't really talk about like the definitive Moon Knight run. I think this is your problem with it. In recent years, they've done some things, the Mr. Knight character, some of the mental stuff that they don't totally reference in this. I know you mentioned like Lemire's run, and they get into some stuff that is so different from what the character was. They eventually, ultimately, usually come back to this, usually some component of a street level thing, beating up bad guys. But it is so different, and they do a lot of work here to try to bring it all together. And I think that they, in some ways, it succeeded, in some ways, they failed. But that is the problem with the history of the character. And as you know, there've been so many volumes comic book wise.
Yes.
They've definitely reinvented it a bunch. I mean, he's actually an Avenger for a while, then he's fully against the Avengers for a minute. There's a lot of different takes, and they've done a lot of different things with it.
But he's always been Marc Spector, mercenary, who's possessed by the god of Khonshu, and he's always had split personalities?
Well, originally, when they presented it, they didn't present it as multi-personality. They straight up said, no, it was, again, much more Batman. The way Batman had Matches Malone,
Sure.
Moon Knight had Jake Lockley. Jake Lockley he was a cabbie who would get him information, all that, but it was him. And then Stephen Grant was basically Bruce Wayne. He was a billionaire, had all this money, and he was an industrialist.
He had like a Moon Knight ship.
Yeah.
He had like an owl ship.
Crescent ship.
Yeah. And I was like, are they going to do that in this series? Because I remember him having a ship with like a ladder that falls out of it, and he can just like jump on rooftops.
So by the way, they did the imagery of that with the cape when he's flying.
Right.
Which, again, I was like...
But, I mean, how far can you push things? And again, we're not going to talk about Doctor Strange too, because they pushed a lot of stuff there. But, I mean, how much can you push things with a character that doesn't have an episode that's already come out? Like Doctor Strange is a sequel. People already have been familiarized with Doctor Strange, so the sequel can go bonkers. When you've got Moon Knight and there's a lack of familiarity with the characters, don't you think they have to kind of play things a little bit closer to their belt? And I think if we start talking about the goldfish problem, the first episode, like I think that they did actually a really good job of introducing the multiple personality focus of this character.
I loved the first episode. I loved what they did with the multiple personalities. So again, to be clear, originally it wasn't that. Later they said no, he has multiple personalities.
Okay.
And they went really far with that. And they've even gone as far as pushing this idea that is Khonshu real or not, or is it just in his head? They've played with that many times. Okay.
In the comics.
Yes. Most recently, no, Khonshu is real, but there was definitely a period. And they did a whole run where the whole insane asylum thing comes from is, did he make the whole thing up? And they literally doing several issues making you wonder.
And Jim Pelgrinelli's in the chat there on Facebook, and Geekscape, we're live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch. He says, one of the core concepts I always thought defined Moon Knight was this question. Is there a genuine mystical aspect to the character, or is he just crazy? Is he psychotic, having a break from reality? I like that the show balanced those ideas, but I actually don't think it did that much, Jim. I think right from that beginning in the goldfish episode, the pilot, I think that they right away say, like, this guy is like hearing things, and they really dump Stephen Grant as an entry to it as an Egyptologist. And they say, oh, no, there's a god going on here. And you see a little bit of Khonshu in that episode. He's having like breaks because the editing and things and the way that they jump in action. I thought that was really effective. I also love the first episode. But I actually think they answered the question right there. There's some supernatural stuff going on. Yeah, there's definitely supernatural stuff going on. There's definitely a god speaking to him. He's not just crazy, because the influence on the outside factors is too much. There are people getting he's blacking out and then people are dead. He's coming back too, not knowing how he got there.
Well, here's the thing that the show does, and maybe it's a criticism, maybe it isn't. Instead of just suggesting something and letting it sit, they kind of answer the question pretty quickly. With the insane asylum, I would have thought, great, just end it there, and you're wondering, is he crazy? And that's what the comics did. Is this all in his head? And they don't. They end the episode on seeing Taweret, So they straight up telling you, no, it isn't. They're not leaving you wondering, know. They're telling you, all right, there's much more going on here, but it's real, So
in this first episode, you get I think that starting with Steven was a genius move, because but it also gets rid of all those is he crazy things, because it's so steeped in Egyptology, so steeped in the Egyptian gods, and that is his strength. He's kind of like me. He's kind of a guy who gets beat up and thrown around, and he's always on the losing end of things. And his one strength is that he's really smart with this Egyptology stuff. But
Jonathan, that's not true if it's a high school student in a movie theater.
We're going to get to that on the Doctor Strange special. Okay. Jonathan snapped a little bit last night when people were taking their phones out during Doctor Strange 2. Please don't take your phones out in the theater. Or Jonathan gets mad and God, we'll tell that story on the Doctor Strange 2. There's our preview of that one. Okay, so I have questions about this first episode, because it also introduces the villain. This is Ethan Hawke playing this Arthur Harrow character, who is judging people and killing them if they fail the judgment for God Ammit. And we know now by this point that Mark is hearing a voice, or Mark/Steven is hearing a voice in his head called Khonshu. It's driving him crazy, but now he's run afoul of this guy Ammit and his followers, who are looking for this little device that will lead to, we learn later in episode 2, that it'll lead to Ammit's tomb so that Ammit can be uncovered. And that is what Ammit is asking Harrow to do. Is Harrow a character, Arthur Harrow a character in the comics?
He's the character of the comics. He's not this.
Okay.
He's, and by the way, even the notion of the previous, Avatar, we have seen some previous avatars,
of the Moon Knight Avatar?
Khonshu, but not Arthur Harrow, and not immediately. There's not necessarily a sense that it's a direct line. It's not Iron Fist.
Right.
This made it feel to me very Iron Fist.
Mm-hmm.
Passing it on.
And we get that in the second episode, Some in the Suit, where now Mark is just he's rescued Steven in the museum. He's killed a bunch of things that only Steven could see that looked like figments of his imagination when you see it in the security cameras of the museum. And so now, like, the cat's out of the bag. Like, Khonshu's talking to Steven, and Steven's sharing a body with Mark, who is a mercenary.
Let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the suit thing, look, what I liked was it made it different than what we've seen in the MCU so far. I mean, it's a straight up, it's, you know, Spawn and
supernatural suit. Yeah,
Spawn
it's
and
not,
Venom,
he doesn't
you
put
know?
it on like the bat cowl. It comes out of this power.
And his powers are derived from it. And the fact that it's basically the same, it's what Khonshu's wearing. So it's basically like visually you get that, you know, all right, it's Khonshu's, you know, putting the cloak of his powers over him, right?
And that's new. That's not in the comics.
That's not in the comics.
Okay.
It's not in the comics at all. By the way,
move?
I
move,
like that.
Move.
My big struggle is, I mean, coming all the way to, not to jump ahead, but the level of powers and all that, it's so not what Moon Knight's been. That's the question, good or bad. I mean, it's made him, he's more powerful. He's more of a superhero. As a God's avatar, I mean, an argument can be made like, well, he should be that powerful, right? Like, he should have that. And the
he
fact
can
that
heal.
He didn't was always odd. Yeah.
He's bulletproof.
I kind of like it. It's just, it's not what the comics ever were.
Okay.
I kind of like the Egyptian pantheon. I like the Amulet stuff. I like all this. I think it's a smart way to bring in this pantheon. You know, it's a really interesting thing, you know, way back when they first did Thor, and that was the whole question, you know, were they going to embrace the pantheons of gods in the Marvel universe, in the comics? And with Thor, they kind of they acknowledged Thor, you know, and the Asgardians have been around on Earth, but they pretty much pushed the space alien thing. You know, and the Asgardians interacting, you know, with Guardians of the Galaxy and all that stuff sort of pushed that a bit more, right?
Yeah, and it looks like they're going to do it even more in Love and Thunder when you see Zeus, or you know, you see Hercules in the trailer, don't you?
Zeus.
Or is it Zeus? Is Zeus? Okay.
Yeah. Russell Crowe is Zeus.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's pretty good casting.
Yeah.
Well, I got a couple questions about this one because now you see Amit you see Harrow straight up just kidnap Steven and say, hey, listen, Steven, like, you can join me because I used to have Khonshu in my head. I was the avatar and I know where you're at. You're seeing things, you're hearing things. If you just help me summon Amit, find the tube, like, we can basically do the same thing Khonshu's asking you to do, bring people to judgment. It's just that with Amit, we do it before they've done any evil, before they've done bad, you know. Minority Report kind of stuff. And Steven's like, I'm not going to kill people who are innocent before they've committed crimes. Question that we now in the second one introduce Layla. That's Mark's wife. Steven has no idea she exists. Layla from the comics?
No.
Okay.
Well, I want to say a few things. First, I did want to reference as far as, you know, what they did with Steven and how it's different. The British accent is actually a very clever way to distinguish them. You don't have that in the comics, you know. I mean, so it's like, all right, so, you know, having the different accents, the different personality, it makes a lot of sense. So I thought that was an interesting idea, and we'll get to the explanation for who Steven is to him. But I thought that was a really good idea. The idea that, you know, of him trying to appeal to him that way, yeah. I mean, look, as I said, it's Minority Report. It's bad. I like the idea of, you know, the judgment, because it's a big part of the Egyptian mythology, you know, and, you know, but it's supposed to be, you're judging the dead, not the judging, you know, someone before they've really lived their whole life. So I like that idea. I like the idea of this pantheon. I thought it was cool and interesting. I mean, again, this idea that, you know, look, that generally what the Marvel Comics has done with all the pantheons, and there's multiple. I mean, every mythology that exists, they've done them in the Marvel Comics somewhere or not. And the general idea has been that, look, those gods aren't as in favor, and they usually derive some power from the worship. So a lot of time they're not as powerful, or they've just, you know, or usually there's some idea that I hope that we're going to get in Love and Thunder, seeing as how we're going to have, you know, it's, you know, seemingly a Greek pantheon with the Asgardians, that these pantheons had an agreement amongst themselves to not dabble as much, to stay out of things, or otherwise they might go to war, because that's something that can happen.
Be hunted by Gore, who's the villain
in
Love and Thunder,
exactly.
right?
which
So
I want to get to the gore of it, by the time we get through to episode 6, because I thought that there was a great opportunity that they missed
to
especially with
introduce the
timing.
villain for Love and Thunder, who's
You
hunting
know,
gods.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing. We keep having this conversation. I just have this conversation. We'll get into Doctor Strange obviously later in the week, but how much should these things be connected?
This
It's
one
the
feels
same
very
world.
disconnected.
Yeah. What I always say is what Kevin Feige does really well is some people go like, "Oh my God, it's too connected." It's not too connected. It's actually always personally a little less connected than I'd like. You think they imply the connection and maybe it's there, and then it doesn't really matter. The other properties don't matter. The truth is, the way these things are written, the writers are writing on their own, and then every now and then they come and go, "You can't do that," or maybe just stick this in.
Or
That's
the calendar shifts. The production calendar shifts, and it throws things a little bit out of whack.
And again, we'll discuss this with Doctor Strange, and then sometimes they do a quick reshoot to put something in to just make a little explanation.
It seems like when Doctor Strange was going to release before No Way Home, it seems like there's a No Way Home reshoot scene that was now in Doctor Strange that helps smooth it out. Yeah, and which is great. It really, guys, go see Doctor Strange too. It's really phenomenal. Let's talk about. Oh, go ahead.
But my point is that like at the end of WandaVision, we get that scene that and again, we're not going to go into the Doctor Strange thing, but I just want to say, the end of WandaVision, the tag you have it's clear it's set up for Doctor Strange 2, and in fact is not a scene out of Doctor Strange 2. It's something that's implying where it's going, and so to me, I think that when you look at all the Marvel movies going all the way back to Iron Man, that's what they've done in the tag, and I think that that's a great thing to have in a tag, and if it can work on both levels, I thought it would have been a really cool thing to have Gore the God Butcher, who is the bad guy in Thor, Love and Thunder, who is exactly what he sounds like. He's someone that's goes around and kills pantheons, because in the Marvel comics there's a lot of them. And there's all kinds of, even aliens have pantheons. Like the idea of these gods, these other dimensional beings existing for all kinds of civilizations, not just the Earthlings. So, and the idea there's a being that has a thing against them. They've actually done this. It wasn't, of course, not the first. They've done this Mangog. I mean, the Demiurge. They've done a few of these usually in Thor comics, but it would have been a perfect place to bring in at the end of Moon Knight, to say, and you didn't have to kill them all if you want to keep some of them around, but to actually see that would have been cool. Likewise, it'd be great to see that, in the Thor movie. We probably won't.
Right.
But
to see the Egyptian gods in one of the pantheons. I agree.
Right.
And we've seen other things. We've seen stuff in Shang-Chi. We've seen stuff in Black Panther. We've seen these other worlds.
Right.
Based on their religions. So the question I have...
Did you catch that they make that Black Panther reference in Moon Knight?
Tell me about it. Well, they do in episode 5, yes. Yeah. They talk about the afterlife and how beautiful there are multiple afterlives. So the question I have for episode 2, Ian, is when Steven finally triggers the suit, the way that Mark triggers the Moon Knight suit we talked about with the wraps that looks like Khonshu, he gets the Mr. Knight suit. But I didn't think that in the comics Mr. Knight was exclusive to Steven.
No.
But it's a really smart move here, like with the accent, in order to differentiate whether Steven or Mark are the ones that are now Moon Knighted.
And even that idea, the idea that it's the different personalities that are being Moon Knight, that's not in the comics.
Okay.
Moon Knight's Moon Knight. You want to see Moon Knight, he's clear on what he is.
So what's the Mr. Knight suit? Yeah.
It's just in his mission as Moon Knight, sometimes he just takes on that aspect. But he's
Sorry
still
about
Moon
that.
Knight.
Matt's adding another show to the Geekscape network. That's what happens every time there's a siren, folks. Subscribe to Geekscape podcast.
The abilities are there, and it's just it's how he's presenting himself.
Okay.
Maybe it's a confrontation. It's a little more direct, and he's Mr. Knight. It's just he's not on the street level fighting necessarily.
I think it's smart here that Steven's
the
Mr.
smart
Knight.
Visual clue, and essentially it's an Easter egg.
Okay. What was really cool though is in episode 6 when they're just switching between them, kicking ass, helping each other out.
I really enjoyed it. I thought it worked really well. Again, but these ideas are these different aspects. And by the way, that's the thing. When it first happens and he's switching, and like, I don't know about you, but at the end of this, I'm unclear about something. When he's switching, like when he's driving the truck, right? It's back and
Yes.
forth between Steven and Mark. There's no
Or
implication that they or well,
or Steven and
maybe there's an
Jake.
or. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. But there's no implication that when he's switching and he's beating people up, that he summoned the suit.
Right.
You know,
Jake
when
doesn't
it
have to
first
summon the suit.
happens,
Jake just kills.
well, exactly, because Marc Spector is a mercenary. So, I mean, my take on it is like, because, and again, remember, going into this and that first, before we get the full on suit and see that, I mean, even at the end of episode 1, when you see it for the first time, I'm like, I don't have a sense that he's any different than the comic Moon Knight that can just kick ass, which Marc Spector can do.
Yeah.
Marc Spector doesn't need a suit to beat up 15 guys.
Right.
I mean, because essentially, I'm saying, and comic wise, he's sort of like he's Batman. He's a mercenary. He's a very skilled, hand-to-hand combatant.
So, episode 3. Now we're in Egypt, and we're going to open up this whole Greek pantheon stuff. Does Khonshu have the power to reset the stars like he does at the end of this episode in the comics?
We haven't seen that, and they do get into a thing recently, and and they did a whole thing with the Avengers about Khonshu getting much more powerful,
Mm-hmm.
but we've never seen prior to that. I mean, again, they're pushing major godlike powers in this,
And that's not in the comics.
No, and they go that far with even with Moon Knight,
Right?
And listen, again, it does make more sense if he's an avatar of a god. I like this as a comic purist. I'm bothered, but I accept that it's something that the Marvel universe didn't have, so I do like it in that sense. I mean, again, ultimately him flying, I'm like, I have to say this in the DC analysis. It's like in some ways he went from a Batman analog to a Superman analog.
Yeah.
And it was weird. So
more like Shazam.
Sure,
because he can summon a power.
Sure. But like when you talked about his crescent copter, and by doing that, they gave you that image. That was always what it was. His crescent copter, and you have that image against the moon.
And he's suddenly flying. He's like, at the end of episode 6, he's blasting around and flying. Big Yank says that he saw that Echo was planned to be the love interest originally. Do you agree? I don't know where that came from.
I never heard that.
I hadn't heard it, but we love you, Big Yanks. Thanks for watching, listening.
I mean, it's an interesting idea.
Totally.
As far as bringing it across, but I think that I feel like that would surprise me because I think that what they set up with Echo is for her to have her own series.
Yeah. Jim Paganelli says, when Steven is told to summon the suit in episode 2, he might not have any idea what the regular Moon Knight suit looks like. So maybe Mr. Knight is just his best guess. It's a suit.
Sure.
It's definitely a suit.
Exactly. And by the way, that makes total sense.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Episode 3. My big things with episode 3 was when it got to the horse dudes like throwing like with the bows and arrows and stuff. I thought that was a little weird. It's just it's starting to get a little Indiana Jones territory. We gotta get to the tomb before the bad guys get to the tomb. I'm okay with that stuff. Yeah. But we do get the Egyptian pantheon for sure in episode 3. My big thing, we talked about it, was like, are they like the Asgardians? Are they like the other gods we've seen in the Marvel universe? And I agree. Like, I think it would be great to have a stinger where one of them is being hunted by something off screen or something, and we realize that it's a preview for Gore, the God Butcher in Thor: Love and Thunder. We did not get that. What we get instead is more race to the tomb in episode 4. And it's by this point I'm kind of being like, okay, is this show just gonna be Mark and Layla trying to race somebody to a tomb, and then they stop them? Maybe there's something big, special effects thing at the end with the gods. Is that all it is? And then by the end of the episode, Mark's shot in the chest twice. And you're like, oh, hello,
Jonathan. You're moving a little quick. I want to back up real quickly. So when episode 2 ended, and suddenly Mark's in Egypt.
Yeah.
For me, I wasn't clear initially, and I was hoping that was a flashback.
Really?
I wanted to see him become Moon Knight.
You have to be patient.
Well, I know. But even then, but I'm saying I wanted to see the origin. And I feel that when we did get that, they did it pretty quickly. Like, he just referenced but you know what I mean? Like it.
Yeah, but because for me the narrative was stopping Arthur Harrow from getting to the tomb, the end of episode 2 where he's in Egypt, I was like, oh, great, we're progressing, we're throwing
Right.
the football down the field, we're getting to the point where like
And
the good
suddenly
guys can
it's
win.
Raiders, right?
Yeah, and then it turns into Raiders, which I was fine with in episode 3. It's kind of starting to get a little
But I'm saying
weird
the
for me.
race, it's Raiders in a lot of ways because it's the race for the thing. That's very Raiders. Obviously,
There's
once you're in
supernatural
it,
elements.
yeah, and it's arguably, you have a bit of what do you call it? Last Crusade in there, going for the tombs. I mean, listen, there's a lot of movies that's what it's doing. It's a different genre and it's pushing that.
4 was so dark that you couldn't see half of what was going on. The choreography, like you really had to like jack up the brightness on your TV to see some of these sequences.
I watched it on a really big TV, so I didn't struggle as much.
Sure.
But because I'm saying on a smaller TV would have been tricky.
Yeah, I have a 57-inch TV. It was okay. But if it was dark,
I watched it on a bigger TV.
Dang. What you got? You move into a house, you get yourself a big TV. You're getting yourself. How is the man cave setting up?
Pretty good. It's pretty good.
I haven't been invited. I haven't been invited to the man cave.
It's actually getting to a place I'm really close to, like that I could have people over to it.
Okay.
I got the couch in. I got the TV set up. It's still a little
Justin said he's been over there.
No.
I know. I'm making stuff up. I'm trying to create friction.
You've been outside.
Yeah. Ian lets me stay out. Ian lets me come to
fairness,
his house.
That was major pandemic.
I know.
Still, so,
I know.
But
okay, so Mark gets shot in the chest twice after he finds the tomb of, and so Harrow looks like he wins. He's found the tomb. He's ready to resurrect his god. He's found the little amiibo, little statue where his god's trapped in that just needs to be shattered to release his god. And he shoots Mark twice in the chest. Mark wakes up in an insane asylum, and this is where stuff starts turning into Legion, starts getting bonkers. And we see Mark and Steven together in the insane asylum. And then there's a third shaking sarcophagus that is not opened. We all kind of know it's Jake Lockley. And then
we only know that because we've read comics. People that have read comics don't know that.
They're like, who's in the sarcophagus? And then they got to go to the Google. But we see Taweret at the end of the episode, the hippo god for the afterlife, who leads you through the afterlife. And that was the cliffhanger that got spoiled for me, but all good because we go into episode 5. And this episode, I'll go ahead and I'll have egg on my face. I watched this episode through, and it was such a diversion from the Raiders of the Lost Ark, stop Arthur Harrow from like resurrecting the evil god, to Mark and Steven are suddenly in the afterlife, and we're having flashback episodes. And those usually land at this point in a DC Plus show where you start to have an episodes. For me, with this is Netflix, but the one that I loved was the Kingpin episode 8 on the first season of Daredevil. I love that. Mm-hmm. That was great. But usually somewhere in this 3/5, 4/5 through a season, you're going to start getting the flashback episode origin. And this was that, while the progression to the afterlife. And I was just, the first time I watched this, I was like, this is bonkers. I don't know where the show is. It's confusing. It's driving me crazy.
I love it.
And I even went so far as to send Ian a picture of Fonzie jumping a shark.
Yeah. And I just rolled my eyes. I'm like, I don't know what this episode is going to be like, talking this through to him, because Jonathan's just off the rails again.
Jonathan's fucking wrong.
Yeah.
And I go online and I see that people are kind of liking the episode in a big way, and that they're getting the emotional impact that just washed all over me because I'm a callous human being.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what, Jonathan, you're a little more awake now. You've had your morning coffee. Let's watch it again. And every beat hit.
You turned your humanity on for the second year.
Let's not go that far, Ian. I haven't seen that in years. But that being said, that was great. And the writing was the best of any episode. The emotional stuff was insane. And when young Mark's brother says later Gators, I was like, please don't do this. I already knew what was in store, that young Mark was going to lose his brother. He's going to blame himself for it. His mother was going to turn on him, and he was going to have to create the Stephen Grant persona based on his like fictional love of adventure movies to save him. And that when the little kid starts speaking in a British accent, when his mom is banging on the door to get in to abuse him, I was like, no, I can't watch this. This is brutal. It was an incredible flashback episode. It was so well written. Everything was well done.
Yeah,
and we
I
got some
loved
action.
episode 5.
I mean, I don't know what to say about it other than Jonathan got egg on his face, went back and watched it, and every beat worked. And we got such a beautiful explanation for why Mark created an alter ego and a different persona. Yeah, this is a really beautiful episode, arguably my favorite Disney Plus Marvel episode of any of the series. And this really elevates the series to me. It can be really confusing to a lot of people, and I can see where it definitely confused earlier Jonathan. Let's call him the other Jonathan persona. But when I flip personas to more patient human Jonathan, that
I saw Jake Lockley last night, right?
Last night, when that kid started taking photos of Doctor Strange 2, the screen in like putting him on his Instagram, yeah, you saw Jake Lockley Jonathan snap out. And let's just say that kid did not wait for the teaser. That was weird. He left the theater before the teaser.
He was afraid of you.
If he was such a Marvel fan that he wanted to get cred on social media by posting spoilers to his stupid Instagram stories, you would have thought he was a Marvel fan enough to know that there were going to be credit tags. Why didn't he wait through the credits?
Because he was afraid of you.
No, I think it's because he saw Justin. And he knew I was going to pick up Justin and throw him at him. Big Yanks is throwing.
Justin was also afraid.
Shade. Big Yank says 57-inch LMAO shorty. Hey man, listen. All right, Big Yanks is going to buy me a TV for my wedding. Thanks. You can also arm wrestle Ian at my wedding, so have fun with that. All right. Jim Puckerley says, yeah, episode 5 did remind me a lot of Legion. I think it's season 1 of Legion, episode 7. The whole thing is a mental protection and like an asylum. I don't know, mental projection. I think Jim means to say in an asylum. Yeah, it was heavy Legion, and I can see why that shook a lot of people. It shook early Jonathan, but late Jonathan loves this episode so much, and by the end of it, I was all effing in. In the ending, where Steven pretty much sacrifices himself, saving Mark, and the whole realization that if Mark knows how to fight, I know how to fight. Let's go save Mark, and it costs him. That was beautiful.
Yeah, it was great.
Insane, emotional, leading into Gods and Monsters, where now Mark is in the afterlife. We've seen this afterlife. It's the beautiful promise of a balanced life. The hearts are balanced. Taweret told you about it. She said it's very beautiful. It's like the afterlife that the Wakandans believe in, that we've seen in Black Panther. Any Easter eggs that I've been missing in any of these episodes that are similar to that Black Panther reference, Ian? We'll talk about the one in the Stinger, but when we get to episode 6. But anything we've missed so far?
There aren't huge Easter eggs. I think that's about it. I mean, I do want to talk about episode 6 and Layla in terms of to what extent that's an Easter egg or an amalgam of a character and stuff.
Well, let's get to it because Mark is in the afterlife. We've seen some back and forth with the asylum, and still where we've got a version of Arthur Harrow running the asylum and kind of keeping Mark /Steven /Jake Lockley, you can argue, imprisoned there in his mind, doing a little bit of gaslighting there. It's up to you whether or not how much of that degree you think that that's a literal place or a mental place. But here we got ourselves with Mark in the afterlife with this beautiful fields of wheat. And he says, no. I can't leave Steven like that. I can't leave him imprisoned as sand in the underworld. I'm going to go back and get him. And he races back to save him.
I thought that was interesting because, they do this interesting thing with the Mark-Steven relationship where they're acting like brothers.
By this point, yes, because they've seen how the origin and its tragic origin for the two of them.
Which is endearing. But I think what bugs me about that is, I guess you can argue it's self-love, but not get your mind out of the gutter, Jonathan.
No, sir, please. I'm still thinking about fighting kids in a movie theater.
Well, as I said, get your mind out of the gutter, Jonathan. But, I feel like it would have been better to present that as, no, he has to save Steven because it's part of him. Because I think ultimately that's the idea when he with the heart and sharing the soul. It's like, but it's part of his soul. That's what the idea should be. Peter David did this. What for me was such a definitive thing back in Incredible Hulk 377, because the famous multiple personality is the Hulk, right? And this unification thing, So
that was Smart Hulk.
Well, more than
Mr.
just
Smart Hulk.
Yes, but here's the thing: is they had done Professor Hulk before. Professor Hulk, and in the comics, I mean, in the MCU, what we're calling Professor Hulk is exactly what I'm saying. But in the comics, they had done just Hulk with Bruce Banner's brain before, and he didn't have any rage. He was just he was Banner in the Hulk's body.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. But what David did later was he took, Joe Fixit, he did the childlike Hulk and Bruce and merged all of them. Okay. And that was a more rounded personality. He had edge to him. He had the conniving stuff of Joe Fixit, but he had Bruce's intellect. So it was more than just what we called Professor Hulk, but he was a smart Hulk. Okay. Anyway, and that's the point is, Stephen there to just protect Mark, which of course as adults seems really odd, right? And it actually begs the question, well, what is Jake? Well, Jake is really what I think is protecting Mark.
Both of them.
Yes. Mark arguably as an adult became somebody who could protect himself because he learned how to fight, went in the military. But Jake was clearly the one that no nonsense, just whatever it takes, was gonna just hurt someone.
Put it over the edge.
Steven. My point is that normally in these stories, when you see the protected personality, they're the crazy badass type, and that's what Jake is. Steven's more of the retreat.
So we skipped over in that episode 5, but you got your origin. One of the doors that they go behind to see the memory was the origin.
Got it, but you didn't really. You saw the aftermath of it. You didn't actually see it.
Right, and you saw that Mark was betrayed. By the same character that was in the origin, the bad mercenary group.
Bushman. Yeah,
and Bushman, and he works his way into the tube and he dies. And for me, that was enough for me to be like, hey, Khonshu manipulated this guy, because it becomes an issue in episode 6 when Khonshu appeals to Layla to say, hey, like, Mark is dead, Amit's going to be resurrected, I need to possess you, and Layla has to fight off actually Layla doesn't have to fight at all. She's like, go F yourself, Khonshu. I'm never going to let you possess me. I'm never going to become your avatar. So a depowered Layla has to watch Amit get resurrected, give a ton of power to Harrow, and Harrow just starts being like, hey, we're going to Cairo, we're going to start sucking souls. It's soul sucking time. And it looks like Amit is won. Mark's still dead, but when he saves Steven, and obviously Jim Paganelli in the Facebook comment says Jake would have just left Steven's ass there in the sand. She actually gets another god. She starts freeing other gods and breaking their statues, and she's possessed by another god. Layla gets powers. She becomes an avatar. Tell me about that, because if Layla's on the comics, it sounds like this isn't in the comics.
Well, Scarlet Scarab. So apparently
they're
calling it Scarlet Scarab. Yeah.
Okay.
And Scarlet Scarab is a character from comics, not specifically Moon Knight comics. Scarlet Scarab is an Egyptian character, goes back to the Invaders comic. And the Invaders was Invaders was
the 40s one?
Yeah.
Wow.
Now let's remember, the Invaders is a retconned team, a Captain America's team in the 40s, but not from the 40s comics. Okay, it was in the 70s. They said, oh, Captain America had an Avengers type team in the 40s. And originally Scarlet Scarab was actually a villain who then, because he's Egyptian, all that, that then decides, oh, no, Nazis are bad. So ends up fighting with the Invaders, was initially a bad guy. And I believe actually, though, that, the hint of that is that Layla's father's name is the original Scarlet Scarab's name.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's a cool Easter egg. That's a really cool Easter egg.
Mile forward, yeah. So
when she gets like flight power, I started calling her Wonder Woman 1984.
Totally. I mean,
because she starts getting like the metal wings and everything.
Exactly. I said the exact same thing. I was like, it's Wonder Woman. And
she became Wonder Woman 1984.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So Layla becomes an avatar. She kind of holds down the fort. until Mark is resurrected after saving Steven. Now Khonshu's back in business, but Khonshu literally is back in business. The souls start getting sucked so badly, and time's running out for them, that Amit is now literalized. She's a giant god on Earth, stomping around like a kaiju.
Amit was cool looking. I mean,
yeah, Amit was awesome.
Walking crocodile,
These cool tendrils.
Cool. Yeah,
stomping on things, throwing cars. Yeah. And now the
big question is, did they jump ahead of that from Black Adam?
I don't know, but it's a good point. We'll see what they do in Black Adam, because this episode, I can see why people would say it's bonkers. There are a couple of people who texted me were like, "Nah, Moon Knight was bad, dude. That ending was whack." Well, listen, but I kind of like the kaiju gods fighting when Khonshu comes back and is a kaiju. He fights the kaiju Amit, and then on the street you've got 3 heroes or people fighting. You've got Harrow, who's powered, and you've got Moon Knight and Layla.
Listen, I thought that was fun. I mean, look, here's a problem, and I mean, I just had this conversation with my wife last night, who's a writer.
This is what you'll talk about.
And yeah, well, we talk about these kinds of things a lot. We definitely talk about breaking down story, all that,
Okay.
And what the problem you have with, most comic book properties, superhero properties, is no matter how good it is, and she says to me all the time, like, yeah, you get to the end, and she loves the character stuff, and it takes her out. We watch as a family, we watch Superman and Lois with my stepson, who's 12, and it's funny. My wife, she's all in for the family stuff, and then next thing, Superman's on screen fighting someone. She's like, "All right, I'm going to sleep now."
The spectacle stuff. She's not part of it.
Or you want to get the yeah. It's like, and I mean, and there's different ways of doing it. I think that Moon Knight as a show across the board didn't do so much of it that it got overly redundant. I agree with you. I actually thought it was really kind of cool. You have the gods fighting and the avatars fighting at the same time. I thought that was cool and fun. So yeah, I mostly enjoyed that. Them working together. I think I'm really interested to see what they do with Scarlet Scarab. It's sort of one of my issues with the way Moon Knight ended, because where the hell did she go?
Right.
You're
right. Yeah.
Like the show was developed in a big way, both that she was devoted to Mark. And obviously, Mark loves her, but Steven loves her too. And she sort of has something developing with Steven, arguably recognizing he really is Mark, But and then where is she, And honestly, I was really enjoying it. I was kind of confused by the ending,
And correct me if I'm wrong, but Mark asks to be freed at the end by Khonshu.
Right.
And does he not have his powers at the end when he wakes up again? But he's Mark, and he wakes up in Steven's situation where he's chained to the bed and he trips and falls on the sand, like we saw in the opening episode.
So back up. We know that there's a moment that he blanked again, and clearly Jake Lockley persona took over.
Yeah,
right.
There's enough. There's a lot of Deus Ex going on in this episode.
Yeah. So we know
literal
that
Deus Ex.
We know that they did. They definitely put throughout the series that there's another personality. So we know that that's in there. Then we see they're beating. They beat Amit by beating Harrow. Right.
Mm-hmm.
They put Harrow in there, and there's an actual conversation that he's not going to kill him. Right?
That Harrow's now a prison for Amit.
Right. That's what it seems like. But then you cut to the asylum. And for this is where it got really like, wait, what the fuck? What's happening
This is now? The kind of tag, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. But here's the thing is they've established that the asylum we saw before was basically Mark's mind making sense of the afterlife and about being about to be judged. Okay, I thought that was great. I thought that made a lot of sense, So to then have Harrow in asylum, and here's where it got to me. I'm like,
and it can't be Harrow's asylum because he wasn't killed.
No, it's right. Obviously it's a physical place. He's in an asylum. And I'm like, are we supposed to make a connection that Mark said, well, we're not going to kill him, and then what? They came and he got arrested,
and he still has the long hair, so that is the Harrow from the physical world.
Yeah, he's the Harrow from the physical world. He got arrested. Is he suddenly like they just took him? Am I in the Batman now? And they took him to the asylum. Like,
to
do you know
Arkham.
what I mean? Like, it suddenly felt like I suddenly felt like I was on a different property.
It was
It
cool
didn't seem to
though
line up.
that when they got to the exterior, the asylum was named after Bill Sienkiewicz.
Yes, but
That was
you
cool.
see my point though, right?
I do. It got a little. If they had just made it look like a different asylum and been like, "Hey, this is the real world," he did get like arrested for whatever cult he was running around with, stealing souls, like whatever.
I didn't see cops or anything outside.
Right.
You know, like I don't get it.
But I think making it a little different would have helped clarify that.
I guess, something.
Right. But
now it seemed like a weird jump. And likewise, we had several weird jumps because we have that. We have Mark and Steven are back in Steven's apartment, you know, which is weird in itself.
England. It's in London, yeah.
By the way, even the idea, I never thought they did a great job of explaining. So he has an apartment on his own. So is he the Steven persona so often that he had to have his own apartment that isn't Mark's apartment, but Mark also does clearly because he hides stuff there too. So is it
Mark has money.
Apartment?
Yeah, so Mark is funding the apartment, knowing that sometimes he becomes Steven and has to support it.
He changes the fish, you know.
He uses like the stacks of cash he's got hidden in. Yeah, well, sure. Why not?
So I guess it's both their apartments.
Mm-hmm. The goldfish drawing it in episode 5 was a big.
And the idea, Steven gets calls from the mother. It's not real, so that's like Steven's delusional when he's Steven.
Could be Khonshu using a lady's voice. Hi, Mark. Hi, Steven.
Listen, I get the joke, but you know, Khonshu's not taking any agency in this illness that Mark has.
Right.
Mark's had it long before there was Khonshu.
Mm-hmm.
Khonshu takes advantage of it to some extent. So then back to your question, he denies the power, and Khonshu kind of says the idea is like, yeah, I don't care because I'm keeping this one, you know. Mm-hmm. So which inherently means that they have it. But here's what did make sense to me.
Wait, keeping this one in reference to what?
Jake.
In reference to Jake.
Yeah.
So okay.
But my issue is that doesn't Mark say, "Oh, we're still going to be a superhero," like if he's still going to have the power? It didn't quite make sense to me.
But at least you got to see Jake Lockley.
Right. And Jake Lockley speaks Spanish. I don't know why.
Yeah, with a little bit of a New York style.
Yeah, I don't know why.
And he shoots Harrow in the head.
Yeah.
Freeing Amit. If Harrow's now the prison for Amit's spirit, it's like
but they said
one of the statues.
What they said was if you kill him, you're killing Amit because Amit's in him.
Oh, got it. Right.
That's what they said.
Jake Lockley has no problems doing that.
No, not at all.
Okay, so it's very messy in at the ending, but overall, like good series.
Yeah, no, I mean, I mostly loved it. I just thought it didn't quite stick. The ending seemed a bit confused. Oh, I meant to. So I looked up. So the thing with Bushman, Jeremy Slater, who was the showrunner, said he didn't do Bushman as the villain because Bushman really is basically our Killmonger.
Sure.
I mean, really, it's pretty much the same character, you know? So, like, it just, you know, no reason to do it. And I get why, even to show him at all, it's still just Eric Killmonger, you know?
Right.
Honestly, what would have been really cool is just have Eric Killmonger's one dip, you know?
That would have been sick.
They didn't.
He's working for Killmonger, right? Or if he's working for Ulysses Claw, would have been awesome too.
Yeah. I mean, again, they've said all along, Larry, they made it separate and all that, even though it's the same world. Because at a certain point, maybe it gets a little silly to have those connections. You know, it's a big world.
Mm-hmm. So Ian, we're talking about this Killmonger thing, which would have been cool. The Claw thing would have been cool. Some kind of reference to the greater MCU. I am not confident we're going to get a second season of Moon Knight, just because it looks like Oscar Isaac is such a stratospheric talent.
Well, I don't know that it's about that. Look, you have to look at it like this. You know, the 6-episode thing. It's just a movie.
Yeah,
it's just, you know.
So they could bring it back for a sequel.
That's what's happened. You know, you have actors that used to be, they'd never do television. It's not television.
Mm-hmm.
Look, you know, you have to go. We get 6 hours. You know, that's the thing. You know. We get 9 episodes. That's what Kevin Feige said. They budget these out. They're 6 hours long. However they cut them up, that's what they are. And, you know, and budget-wise, you know, it's just it's shooting a movie. That's what it is for the actors. It's cool. They slot in shooting a movie. They slot in shooting one of these series. You know, it's the same thing.
So, do you think we're going to get a Moon Knight season 2? And what
I
would
would
it
be
be?
surprised if we didn't. What the EPs have said is they haven't heard because generally the way Marvel works is they're not necessarily doing another movie. It's what are the other plans? In my mind, there isn't a logical leap that he's now in a certain feature. It's not like Ms. Marvel. We know that we're getting a series and then she's going to leap into the Marvels.
Yes.
Even that doesn't mean there's in a season 2. But I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm.
I do have something that I wanted to say about that. But yeah, it's interesting. Loki season 2 we're waiting for. I hope he's going to show up in Thor: Love and Thunder.
For
I have
She-Hulk?
more to say on that I'm going to save for Doctor Strange. But She-Hulk, yeah, another interesting one. We are going to get Hulk in that.
Banner
but
Hulk. And Abomination.
yes.
It's going to be a party. It's going to be a Gamma party.
As I've said for a while, I think that they have some big plans of pieces of moving around the board. That they're doing a Thunderbolts style Dark Avengers thing. I think that they're doing that in a big picture thing to create that to then spur on the recreation of the Avengers.
And so would Moon Knight land in any of that? Like, could Moon Knight be
definitely land in something like that?
A continuation of the Daredevil story?
I don't see. That's the thing. Classic Moon Knight, yes. This version of Moon Knight, I don't think so.
Cool.
It seems like they're tying more. Listen, the most recent take on Moon Knight, they actually have him dealing with more supernatural stuff.
Okay, so he could tie into
Blade. His first
Blade.
appearance is actually in a Werewolf by Night comic.
So could we see him in like the Black Knight Blade story that we had from the Eternals?
Totally could. Okay. We totally could. I'm not saying that's what they're going to do, but
yes, you are.
That's a direction that actually can make a lot of sense.
So there's some diversity in like the ideas that they can go with on Moon Knight.
Listen,
I'm confident we're going to see him again. I'm more confident that it's going to be in someone else's story than it's going to be in a Moon Knight story.
That's the question. That's the question.
Well, I'm down. Either way, I'm down because I really enjoyed this one. Even if it got messy at times, even if Jonathan Grumpy watched an episode and didn't like it, then had to rewatch it, I was still down with it. Right. I mean, that first episode is so strong, and then on revisiting it, that 5th episode is phenomenal.
Yeah.
That I look forward to more of it. Ian, we're going to talk some Doctor Strange in a few days. Right. I get a chance to see it again tomorrow. Cool. Geekscape is listening to this. Please protect yourselves from the internet and the person sitting in front of me during the screening who is posting pictures from the screen onto his social media.
Well, here's the thing: is these movies you got to go see them right away. It's annoying.
Please go see them. Opening weekend, please go see them.
Yeah. Time was you could wait. You were safe till Monday. I don't feel safe anymore. John, I don't feel safe. I can't. I'm not safe in my own home.
Do I need to go and threaten to beat up high schoolers?
No, you have to Jay and Silent Bob this shit, Jonathan. Okay.
I was ready to yesterday.
You got to go door to door, to these people that are posting shit on the internet. You ring the bell, come out, you ask them that's the name and the handle, and you punch them in the face.
Ian, I felt like such a not geek, but this guy was posting during one of the biggest spoilerific scenes, taking photos in the theater and posting them to his fucking social media. And I got to tell you, as distracting as that was, and as obnoxious as that was, it was also distracting for Heidi to be really disappointed in me for the rest of the movie and be like, I can't believe you said that, Jonathan. I can't believe it. Violence is not the answer. Who are you? I can't believe you did that. I was like, baby, that was Jake Lockley talking.
That's right.
That wasn't me. I blacked out and I was like, I'm going to kill this fucking kid if he doesn't put his fucking phone away. So you run that risk, Geekscape. Put your phones away and avoid spoilers on the internet because there's a lot of Jake Lockleys running around out there. And Ian is actually one of them. I know Ian, he practices the lethal arts.
I'm mild-mannered, man. I don't get involved.
Ian says he would not have backed me up. He just wanted to watch the movie.
That's not what I said.
What'd you say?
I said I wasn't getting involved until I saw the guy coming over the seat.
The seat. Okay.
You're yelling. I was just all right. I'm ignoring this. I'm watching the movie. If I saw him come over the seat, I'd have been different.
And I was yelling at the guy.
You're just sitting there screaming at the guy. I'm like, all right, I'm over here watching this movie. I'm gonna concentrate on the movie, But
does your wife think less of me?
I don't think she could think less of you.
She thinks differently. She's like, don't hang out with that wild card. That guy's insane. He's gonna get
He
you
was just like,
stabbed.
it seemed like
Jonathan's such a mild-mannered, nice guy.
It seemed like it was about the distraction, and we're like, well, so we're just like, you were being a much bigger distraction than him having his phone on.
No, this motherfucker had us like that phone was out and bright, and he kept taking it out to take photos.
Yeah,
and he straight up ignored me the first 2 times I had told him to put the phone away.
I mean,
and I was a mess. And then he called me. Then he said, "Shut up, dumbass." And that's when I said, "You're gonna get your ass beat." That's where Jake Lockley came out. And then Heidi was mad at me. She's like, "Did you just say you're gonna beat that guy's ass?" And I was like, "No, I probably would have gone to get this. I would have gone to get the employees first. Come on." I just got mad when he called me a dumbass. It triggered me back to middle school.
Yeah, I get it.
Jake Lockley came out. I had like a British accent suddenly. I had a New York accent suddenly. I started sounding like Big Yanks. All right, Geekscapists. Yeah. You're going to see us very soon in the next few days as we talk Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. And it's fantastic. We love the movie. I can't wait to see it again. And I can't wait to talk to this guy, Ian, about it again. I think this was a great episode. Hopefully it helped clarify Moon Knight a little bit. And if not, maybe Moon Knight's just not your character. But as you know, Marvel, you know Disney, there's going to be another one right around the corner. And there is with Geekscape too.
If nothing else, it clarified for the listeners that you got a little Jake Lockley in you.
Yeah, I do. Yes, I do. Don't hate, create, or don't put your phone. Don't take your phone out in the theater, or Jonathan's going to create mayhem. Love you, dude. Thanks for doing this with me. Geekscape. I hope you enjoyed this. Share Geekscape with all your friends. Hit subscribe on all the podcatchers, and leave us a review. That really, really helps us get guests for the main show. It really helps when they're like, oh, let me check the reviews. Oh, people love this show. Awesome. I think I'll go and be a guest. And we're working on that stuff too. So, Ian, I'll be talking to you soon. Geekscapists, thank you. And don't hate, create, and don't start fights in movie theaters if you can avoid it. Okay? Peace.